Okay, so I'm going to start with the second part of the great story of numerals. So I'm going to start with the Babylonian numerals today. So this is how the Babylonians marked their numbers. If you see, these are the marks that were similar to those of the Sumerians. They had this mark for 1 and this one for 10. This was a way to group numbers. If they wanted to write a 9, they would make 9 1 marks. This is how they would write 23. They also wrote with a stick. So, back in the story of communication and signs, the Greeks took letters from the Phoenicians and changed them a little bit. Well, they also took their numbers and changed them to make their own. Well, now we have our Greek numerals. So this is a symbol for 1, and this is a symbol for 5, or penta, like they called it. 10 is deca. So remember, the Romans, well, they took the letters from the Greeks and did the same with the numbers. So we have Roman numerals. You might have seen these Roman numerals before. So these are the symbols that represent the Roman numerals. We have an I for 1, V, X, L, C, D, M, and they represent these numbers. Well, if you take a look at the Greek and the Roman numerals, so here's the Roman, here's the Greek. I wonder if you notice any differences or similarities. If you notice, the X is the same, and the Roman numeral for 1, I, is also the same. Well, there's also Chinese numerals. So Chinese numerals, we see that 1 is lying down. So is 2 and 3. If I was going to write these numbers down and connect them like a 2 and 3, some people think that 2 and 3 came from those. So where did we find this evidence of numbers today? When were they first written down? Where did our numbers come from? Well, they come from India, from 2,000 years ago. The symbols that were carved are very similar to the signs we write. But the numbers that we use to write with are called Arabic numbers, but the Arabs don't even use them. So here's a story. The people from India traded with the Arabs. The merchants took food and clothing from India to other parts. There was a book on arithmetic. They thought this was a very clever system for symbols. So when they decided to pass it on to Europe, because there is a book from the year 976 AD where the symbols looked very similar to ours. So we can say they come from the Arabs, even though they didn't use them, which is how they got their name. Some people call these numbers Hindu-Arabic numerals because they originated from India. It wasn't until people began to print books that all the numbers started to look the same. When everything was done by hand, there were a lot of variations, but with printing, it became standard. Hi again. So there's another interesting thing. Do you remember the playing the zero game in Children's House? Not all of you were in Children's House, so maybe you don't know. But there was no 0 in Roman numerals. But India, they had a 0. So that meant that you could write any number you wanted just using the numbers 1 to 9 and then putting the 0 in the right place. So this is a story of numbers that we have for math. Counting from 1 to 9 is so much easier than all the other systems that people have developed. So someone, somewhere, developed these numbers, and we should be grateful for them, or else we wouldn't be able to write if they hadn't created them. I also wanted to share three other charts with you guys, just so you guys could take a look. We have some old European numerals from the year 976. We have Egyptian numerals, and the Egyptians, they used pictures as their symbols. So that's how they wrote words and numerals. They use something called hieroglyphics. I also have this chart that shows the changes in our numerals over the years and how they slowly evolved to the ones that we use today. So I urge you to explore different kinds of numbers, see what you can find. Maybe you want to check out numbers in a different country that I didn't mention. See what you find and send us pictures. But that's all I have for now. Bye, coyotes!